Excel contest.
It has an add-on that
is called Power Query.
This feature already in Office 365 version is available within the Data tab and all the options to get transform data. Ya customala mo que they match the options available within Power Query, but besides these options that allow me to load data from various sources, I also have the option to writing my own functions and also using the language that comes incorporated within this tool. To use M language po nga senpage enderes, we can retrieve data, connect from other sources, and create a blank query.
To be able to consult the guidelines.
Now we can write our own query from the function bar. In this case, and by doing the same, we're going to describe the function we want to use. To be able to read the data that at this moment are in our available book, in this case it's going to be the excel.currentWorkbook function. We open and close parentheses, press enter, and as you can see, the available tables we have within this Excel actor will load. We can check a bit what it contains with the name the table has and with the content of this table. If we click outside the table text, then at the bottom we will display a preview. I want you to pay attention to the headers. In this case, they don't match. And if we try to unify the data, you will see that it will not be possible to incorporate the values properly, and a name or another name will appear here for me. And well, it's not what I need. I can modify each of these elements using the language. What I want to do is clean the headers before unifying them. How can we declare language? We can do it in two ways, directly from our advanced editor, or we can include custom columns within the current environment. The current environment refers to what I'm seeing right now. At this moment, I have a table that contains two columns that associate. Once inside one of these columns, it also contains other tables, which are the tables I currently have in Excel. For this exercise, I will remove the name and will only keep the content, which is where the tables I want to unify are. And to declare M language, well, I can just come here quickly, and let's say this is going to be called data clean. A custom column on this data claim. Can I use the reserved terms led and led refer to what I want to execute within in this setting. To return what I am generating inside let, I use the reserved term in. I can print the result of these elements. In this example, I want to keep the headers in the tables. So I am going to call a variable headers tb using a function table dot column name names. I am going to stick only with the names contained in each of the tables. Why do I use a table function? Because remember the content, which is this column right here, tables, and within these tables there are columns. What I want is the names of those columns. What's next? Well, can I return these headers within this environment? If you click accept, you'll see it returns something strange. It's a listing. It's the list of names for each of these tables. If I go to the next list, then this name that's bothering me will appear here, and that doesn't let me unify it the way I want. Let's go to the advanced editor, and in the advanced editor, let's check what steps are happening. Each of these steps corresponds to a variable that I'm generating at this moment. And if we format this a bit, you'll see that a LED appears here, which is the LED that I just declared and the link that I am returning as a result of this query within this term. I can generate all the logic I want. And the same thing is happening in the initial query that was created. There's also a LED, and through the link it's returning the full value of it. A variable named custom. What do I want to do once I have the list of names? Well, what I want is to have the headers clean. So I'm going to use the previous variable instead to get the names texts completely clean. And to do that, I'll use Lisp transform. It's a way of iterating over a list with several items, and we will pass the headers to it to And on this TV header, I'm going to apply a method to keep only what corresponds to text. I'm going to use a from the point select. And in this text select, I'll use uppercase, which is the default way of the variable used by each. Each is an iterator within this context. So what do I want to keep? Well, I want to keep just the texts. And to be able to keep the texts, I need to declare a list with those texts. So I'm going to say to select everything from A to Z, both in uppercase and lower cases, because M language is case sensitive, which means it distinguishes between uppercase and lowercase. If I return Federer's cling right now, you will see that nothing has changed. But if I look again at the names that appear, they are now all uniform. There are no more special characters like the ones we saw a moment ago. Now I need to rename this table so it can take the new names. To do so, I will go back to my advanced query
I'm going to
generate a new step. And I'm going to call this to be able to first rename it. I need to know where the table is. The table at this moment is contained in a column called content. Remember, when we check our query, content contains several tables. So if this is generating an iteration, meaning it's checking element by element, I can pass it again this element, name it content to rename it. So I'm going to do the table rename columns, and then I'm going to pass the table. In this case, the table is inside the column with, and once we pass the content, I can then create the logic to rename the names. For this, I need to generate a list of lists that help me make that change. And we can use another method, which is list_zips, to generate this logic. What's happening is going to ask me for a list with items listed. In this case, I already have two lists. I have the first one that has the original names and the second one that has the clean names. So we're just going to pass it these variables. One will be headers db and the other will be headers client. Once we pass it this logic, then we can print rename tb. Click on accept and you'll see that once again a table appears here. But now the table, in this case, in this last row, you will see that the headers are already standardized. The ship no longer has this issue and the table no longer has any problems here. So I can deploy this. Once I deploy it, well, they will merge properly. What else can I do with this language? Well, I can also create such complex logics to clean texts or use them for some additional cleaning. Say I'd like to capitalize each letter whose index is even. That is uppercase F, lowercase e, uppercase N, lowercase n. Let's see how we reach that logic. Let's remove this column here. And we're going to add a new custom column to use M language. Within a custom column, we've already seen it. You can simply call the led method and the ing method again to return the result. In this case, I want to keep a list of text. So I'll call this list text to generate. I will need to iterate over each of the elements that the name contains. So I need to first turn the text into a list. And this I will
achieve it through text.
And I'll pass it
the name so that it
that the genius was cheerful. Once I have the logic, then here I can convert to upper and lower this string of texts that this query is going to return to me. How can we generate it? Well, again, I'm going to use a method called list_transform, which allows me, just as its name suggests, transform a list. I will pass the list text variable over list text. I will be able to use an iterator again, which will be each, to be able to modify each of the elements as I want to see them so that I can turn each of the letters into uppercase. I'm going to use a trick.
Statement if
you'll be able to say if number.mod. That is, I want to keep the modulus of the result of a number. From list to position of what thing from the text list where be equal, or find the corresponding element divided by 2. If all, this result is equal to 0.
And we're going to format it a bit.
So if this result is equal to 0, I'll tell it to convert that letter to uppercase. I'm going to write the them. And to be able to convert it to uppercase, I'll use text from topper puppet, bmapinasis. In this case, I'm going to use the default variable and simply return the value in lowercase that should already be within my context. Close the parentheses and check the logic. Perfect. Now I need to return the complete text. To be able to return it, so I will use text combine to take it. All the outcome of this variable, and if we missed a comma, we'll just separate this with double quote. Let's go back, text complete. And here you can see that it is generating an error because we simply lack a comma here. We click on accept and notice that we have succeeded. If you go back to the advanced editor, you'll be able to notice that practically just generated a series of code within these values. Each element, as I mentioned, is a variable. In this way, the M language helps us to generate much more complex queries and structure our data in a much simpler way. I invite you to take my course on Udemy, where you can see various applied cases of how to use M language for practical cases.